Okay, so are you ready to really amp up those leadership skills? I know I am. We've got a ton of stuff here from TC3 Performance, training guides, program info, the whole shebang.
It's a pretty impressive spread.
Yeah, and the thing is, they're not just focused on being the boss, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, that's what really caught my eye, too. They're talking about mental strength, spiritual strength, physical strength, all that, and how it all kind of comes together for leadership.
So you could be leading a team at work, you could be organizing a project with your friends, or even, I don't know, captaining your bowling team.
Exactly. It's a broader perspective on leadership. They're not limiting it to just the traditional corporate setting.
I like that. Okay, so let's dive in, shall we? What are some of the things that really stood out to you digging through all this TC3 stuff?
Well, one of the first things that jumped out was this claim that they can help people boost productivity by 30%, even if you're not a manager.
Whoa, 30%. That's a pretty bold statement.
Right. And they back it up by saying leadership skills improve collaboration and communication no matter what you're doing, which makes sense.
Yeah, better communication, better teamwork equals better results. Makes sense to me. So how do they go about actually teaching those skills?
Well, they talk a lot about different leadership styles.
Yeah.
Are you more of an autocratic leader or a democratic leader? Do you lean towards transformational leadership or maybe something more transactional?
Okay, so they're acknowledging that there are different approaches to leadership,
Mm-hmm.
which is probably a good thing because, let's be real, one size definitely does not fit all.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like picture a basketball coach running a practice with military precision, orders barked out, no questions asked.
Okay, I'm seeing it. What kind of leader is that? Drill sergeant.
Uh-huh, yeah, kind of. That's autocratic leadership in action. Very top down.
Got it. But what if that coach gathered everyone around before practice, to discuss strategy, get their input?
That's a whole different vibe, right? That's
Yeah.
democratic leadership. Everyone has a voice, and they work together towards a shared goal.
That actually reminds me more of like a jazz band or something. Everyone has their own unique style and gets a solo, but they also know how to play together to create something really amazing.
I love that analogy. And that's the point. Effective leaders often have to blend different styles depending on the situation and the people they're leading.
This is already making me think about my own leadership style, which honestly I've never really thought about before. What about you? Have you figured out your go-to approach?
I think I tend to be more adaptable, kind of like a chameleon, but
Uh-huh.
this deep dive is definitely making me more aware of my default tendencies.
That self-awareness is what they call reflection, right?
Yep, it's the first stage in their reflect, adapt, thrive cycle. They talk about that a lot.
They do. So
Yeah.
reflection is all about honestly assessing your strengths and weaknesses, how you impact others, all that good stuff.
Yeah, it can be tough to take that honest look at yourself, but it's crucial for growth.
It's like taking stock of your pantry before you go grocery shopping. You need to know what you already have before you can figure out what to add to your cart.
Uh-huh. Exactly. And once you've done that reflection, then comes the adapt stage. You adjust your strategies, communication, maybe even your whole mindset based on what you've learned.
So basically, adapt is about being flexible and willing to evolve. Survival of the fittest, but for leadership skills.
I like it. Only the ones who adapt, survive, and thrive.
And then we hit that thrive stage. Increased confidence, resilience, more positive influence on those around you. That's the goal, right?
It is. It's the culmination of the whole reflect, adapt, thrive cycle.
Okay, so we've got self-awareness, we've got flexibility, we've got this cool thrive thing going on. What else is packed into this TC3 Leadership Development Program?
Well, another big focus is goal setting. They have this very specific 4-step process they advocate for.
Ooh, lay it on me. I love a good plan.
All right, step 1. They say you got to identify concrete objectives.
Ah,
Not just vague wishes, but really specific and measurable goals. They even suggest writing them down and putting them somewhere visible so you're constantly reminded.
okay, so no more, I want to be a better leader. We need a real target to aim at. What's step 2?
Step 2 is breaking those big goals down into manageable steps. They call this developing an action plan. Think of it like creating a roadmap for your leadership journey.
Makes sense. You wouldn't set out on a road trip without a map, would you? Having those smaller steps probably helps keep things from feeling too overwhelming.
Definitely. And then step 3 is all about accountability. Monitor progress. They emphasize regular check-ins to make sure you're on track and to make adjustments as needed.
So it's like having a built-in course correction system. No more setting goals on New Year's Eve and then completely forgetting about them until the next year.
Exactly. They're big on consistency and accountability. And finally, step 4, which is the one I think a lot of us tend to skip over.
Hit me with it.
It's review and reflect, taking the time to honestly evaluate what worked, what didn't, and then using those lessons to keep improving.
So we're back to that reflect, adapt, thrive cycle again, aren't we? It seems like it's woven into everything they do.
It is, and I think that's one of the things that makes their approach so compelling. It's a holistic system, not just a random collection of tips and tricks.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground already. Different leadership styles, goal-setting strategies, this all-important reflect, adapt, thrive thing. But I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this TC3 program.
We have. There's still a lot more to unpack, especially when it comes to their hands-on training and their emphasis on mentorship.
Ooh, okay, so we're going to have to pause here and take a breather. But before we do that, I want you to think about those different leadership styles we talked about. Which one felt the most natural to you? And more importantly, which style do you think you could develop further to really unlock your leadership potential? Hold on to those thoughts, and we'll pick up right where we left off in part 2 of our deep dive.
Maximize your pre-draft experience with TC3 Performance Pre-Draft Training. TC3 Performance focuses on sharpening essential aspects of your preparation, including board work, interviews, and skill work. Transform your preparation into performance. Train with the best. Leadership, training, development. TC3 Performance.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into all things TC3. Last time we were getting into those different leadership styles and that whole reflect, adapt, thrive idea.
And how could I forget that awesome 4-step goal-setting plan? Totally writing that down later. But you know, what I'm really curious about is how TC3 actually teaches all this stuff. It can't just be like reading a textbook, right?
Oh, definitely not. They are all about the hands-on stuff. In fact, there are 3 specific types of training that really stood out to me.
Ooh, hit me with it.
All right, so first up is something they call situational leadership training. Basically, they teach you how to adapt your leadership style to different situations, which, I mean, kind of seems like a no-brainer, right? Isn't all leadership situational?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So, like, what makes their approach different?
I think it's about being more intentional. Most of us naturally adjust our approach depending on who we're working with or what's going on, right? But TC3 gives you a framework for analyzing those situations and then consciously choosing the most effective style.
So it's less about flying by the seat of your pants and more about having a toolbox full of different approaches you can pull from.
Exactly. So for example, imagine you're leading a team of like super experienced people on this really complex project.
Okay, got it. Big brains, big project, lots of moving parts. What's the leadership play?
Well, in that situation, a democratic style might work best, where you encourage lots of discussion and input. But then imagine something unexpected happens, like a major crisis hits.
Oh, so now we've got a real fire to put out.
Exactly. And in that moment, you might need to switch gears and become more autocratic, taking charge, making those quick decisions.
Okay, I can see how being able to switch styles like that could be super valuable. It's like having all the right tools for any job. What else is in that TC3 training toolbox?
Well, another thing they do that I thought was really cool is simulations and real-world projects.
So they throw you into these hypothetical situations and see how you handle it.
It's like leadership boot camp. You get to lead teams, make decisions, and even make mistakes. But it's all in a safe environment, No real-world consequences if you mess up.
That sounds kind of fun, actually.
Yeah.
Like a leadership video game where you can level up your skills.
It does, doesn't it? And speaking of stressful situations, they also offer resilience and stress management training.
Which makes sense, right?
Okay.
Let's be real, leadership can be tough.
Oh, absolutely. And TC3 doesn't sugarcoat that. They acknowledge that there will be challenges, setbacks, probably even some moments of panic.
So what do? Teach you how to meditate on a mountaintop while chanting leadership mantras.
Close. But not quite. This training is more about building those practical skills, mindfulness techniques, coping strategies, communication skills, all that good stuff.
So you can stay calm, cool, and collected even when everything's hitting the fan.
Exactly. They want to make sure you're prepared for the full spectrum of leadership, not just the highlight reel.
I like that. Practical skills for real-life situations.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered the hands-on training, but there's one more piece of the puzzle I want to get to, mentorship. TC3 seems to really emphasize personalized guidance.
They do. And I think it's one of the smartest things they do. Having a mentor who's been there and done that can make a world of difference.
For sure. So break it down for me. What are the actual benefits they highlight?
Well, first off, there's tailored skill development, which is basically about having your mentor help you figure out what you're already good at and where you need to grow.
Makes sense. It's kind of like having a personal trainer for your leadership skills.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just identifying those strengths and weaknesses. A good mentor will help you create a personalized development plan,
Yeah.
give you targeted feedback and connect you with resources.
So it's less about generic advice and more about getting that custom-tailored guidance for your specific goals.
Exactly. And then there's the emotional support piece. Because let's face it, leadership can be kind of lonely sometimes, especially when you're dealing with those tough decisions.
Oh yeah, that feeling of it's all on me can be tough to handle sometimes.
Right. So having a mentor who's been through it all, someone you can confide in, bounce ideas off of, that's huge. It's like having your own personal cheerleader who also happens to be a leadership expert.
Okay, I'm sold. What other benefits did they list?
Well, they talk about experience-based insights, basically tapping into the wisdom of someone who's walked the leadership path before you.
So you can learn from their mistakes and avoid those same pitfalls.
Yep. And their triumphs, too. Learn what worked for them, what didn't, all that valuable stuff.
So mentorship isn't just about skills. It's about mindset, resilience, and learning from someone else's hard-won wisdom.
You got it. And finally, they highlight networking and opportunities. A good mentor can open a lot of doors for you, introduce you to people, connect you with potential collaborators, even advocate for you when opportunities come up.
Okay, so not only do you get the skills and the support, but you also get access to their network. It's like a triple win.
Exactly. And it all comes back to that reflect, adapt, thrive cycle we keep talking about. Mentorship gives you the tools and support you need to reflect effectively, adapt strategically, and ultimately thrive.
I love how everything keeps tying back to that. It really does seem like the foundation of their whole approach.
It is. And you know what? There's this one quote from TC3 that I think sums it all up perfectly.
Ooh, give it to me. I love a good quote.
It says, leadership starts within. Embrace your strengths, learn from every challenge, and let your potential shine.
That is good. So simple, but so powerful.
Right. It's a reminder that leadership isn't about the title. It's about who you are as a person. It's about growth and self-awareness and making a positive impact on the world.
I love that. And on that note, I think it's time for another pause. Before we head into the final part of our deep dive, I want you to think about that quote. What are your strengths? What challenges have you learned from? And how are you going to let your potential shine? Hold on to those thoughts, and we'll be back to wrap everything up and explore what it all means for you as a leader.
Interested in knowing more about the football recruiting process? Join TC3 Performance for our virtual football recruiting seminar. Gain insights, tips, and strategies to take your recruitment journey to the next level. Don't miss this game-changing opportunity. Sign up today.
Okay, so we're back. We've spent this whole deep dive exploring TC3's approach to leadership development, from the different leadership styles to all that training and mentorship stuff. But now I think it's time to get down to brass tacks. Like, what does all this actually mean for us?
That's the big question, right? We've covered a ton of ground, but knowledge is only useful if you can actually apply it.
So true. So let's try to connect the dots a bit. Do you remember those leadership styles we talked about way back in part 1? Like the autocratic versus democratic leaders?
Yeah, those different coaches we were picturing. One was like a drill sergeant and the other was more collaborative.
Right. So think back to those examples. Which one felt more natural, more like your personal style?
And remember, there's no right or wrong answer here. It's more about understanding your default mode, that first step towards becoming a more well-rounded leader.
It all starts with that reflect, part of the reflect, adapt, thrive cycle.
Exactly. Once you've figured out your natural tendencies, you can start to zero in on the areas where you might need to, stretch a little bit.
So if you tend to be more hands-off, maybe you challenge yourself to be more directive when the situation calls for it.
Or if you're more of a command and control type, you could try incorporating some of those collaborative techniques just to have more tools in your belt,
Right. It's all about expanding your leadership range. And this is where those 4 goal-setting steps come into play, I think.
Totally. Identifying those objectives, breaking things down into smaller steps, making sure you're actually making progress.
And of course, taking the time to review what's working and what's not, that review and reflect step.
That's the key. So let's say you realize you need to get better at active listening, maybe to become a more effective democratic leader.
Okay, I like where you're going with this. So how do we turn that into an actual goal?
Well, you got to make it specific, right? So instead of just saying, I need to be a better listener, maybe your goal is, I'm going to actively seek feedback from my team members in at least 2 meetings every week.
Ooh, I like that. Specific, measurable, achievable.
And then you can create a little action plan for how you're going to make that happen. Practice those active listening techniques, set reminders on your phone to ask for input, that kind of thing.
I'm a big fan of this. It's not just like vague ideas. It's like real strategies you can use to actually change your behavior.
And speaking of real-life practice, that's where the hands-on training from TC3 comes in, right?
Oh, for sure. Remember those simulations we were talking about? That's a great way to test out those new skills and build your confidence.
And let's not forget about mentorship. Having someone to guide you and provide feedback along the way can be so valuable.
Absolutely. Your mentor can help you stay on track with your goals and offer advice based on their own experience. Okay, so I think we've covered pretty much everything. But as we wrap things up, I want to go back to that TC3 quote one more time, the one about leadership starting within,
Ooh, that's a good one.
because it really does get to the heart of what we've been talking about. It's not about the title or the position. It's about who you are as a person.
And it's a journey, not a destination, right?
Exactly. So as you continue on your own leadership path, remember to embrace your strengths. Don't be afraid to learn from those challenges. And most importantly, never stop trying to reach your full potential.
That's what it's all about.
Well, I think that's a wrap for our deep dive into TC3 Performance. Hopefully you'll learn something new. I know I did.
And maybe even feel inspired to level up your own leadership game.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Until next time.